Let's dig into this with NBC's Kasie Hunt, who covers Capitol Hill. Senators will be reviewing the FBI's report there today. And we've also got NBC News analyst Shawn Henry, a former executive assistant director of the FBI. Good morning to both of you.
Kasie, so set the stage for us this morning. Lay out the TikTok. What's going to happen?
Well, Hoda, it's a pretty unusual situation up on Capitol Hill. There's one copy of this report. It's going to be held in a safe, in a secure location, and only senators and a handful of committee staff are going to be allowed to access it. So they're going to alternate hours, starting at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, will have the first chance to take a look at it. Then Senator Feinstein, the ranking member, she's going to have a chance at 9 a.m. And then they're going to alternate back and forth. First, the committee members, Republicans, then Democrats. Then that will open up to the full Senate. So we're going to start to get a sense throughout the morning as senators absorb this new information, how this might move forward.
But Kasie, are we kind of right back where we started in terms of there's a few swing votes, people that might go yes or no, and it's still really just what they decide that will determine the outcome here?
That's absolutely right, Savannah. It really just matters. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Jeff Flake, whether they think that this investigation is credible, what they think of any new information that may be in it. Do they think these new interviews corroborate Dr. Ford's story? I will say that Republicans have been sending signals, Republican leadership, that they believe this is going to be enough to get them the votes that they need to confirm Kavanaugh. But again, we still don't know enough yet about what's in this report to be able to say.
And we'll bring in Shawn Henry. Shawn, the FBI has wrapped up its investigation. As Peter reported, they did not interview Dr. Ford or Judge Kavanaugh. Just give us your assessment on that investigation.
Well, I think it comes down to what this investigation was looking to prove. If, in fact, it was about determining whether this sexual allegation, the assault, occurred or not, the first thing you want to do is interview the witness, or at least at some point in the course of this investigation, you want to interview the victim, Dr. Blasey Ford, because you cannot rely solely on the testimony that's provided in front of the Senate. Those things are done in 5-minute increments, and investigators are trained to elicit information and, quite honestly, to determine the veracity of Dr. Blasey Ford. That's what they do. If this was an investigation to determine the broader question, which is the suitability of Judge Kavanaugh to sit on the federal bench, that also appears to have fallen short in that there were many credible witnesses who've come forward who've talked about some of the discrepancies in his testimony versus what they know. One thing I'll say here is I don't think we should judge anybody solely on entries in a yearbook from when they were in high school or excessive drinking in college. You've got to look at the totality of the candidate's background. But if you have people who come forward who are credible, who discount and contradict testimony of somebody who is sitting in front of the Senate for an appointment to the Supreme Court, you've got to determine the veracity and the credibility of that candidate. I don't know that that's been done in this particular case with the limited number of witnesses who've been interviewed.
Yeah, we shall see. Kasie and Shawn, thank you very much.